Begin with the massive No Kings protests that swept the nation yesterday in advance of Trump's military parade. Thousands of protests, peaceful protests, were held in big cities and small towns in all 50 states. Seattle police said tens of thousands showed up. Officials in San Diego and Los Angeles estimated more than 20,000. 25,000 were said to have marched down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And a stunning 80,000 people were said to have marched in Philadelphia, according to local police, with no arrests made during the event. A clear message connected them all.
What we're seeing is this administration continue to run afoul of the law. What we want to do is steer the ship in the right direction in this moment and push back as hard as we can.
Being a daughter of immigrants, I feel like I need to show up and stand up and fight for what's right. You know, we have a country to honor, and everything that's happening right now is very unjust, and that's why we're here. We're the voice for those that cannot be heard, and that's why we're standing up. It's a privilege.
Because we see our democracy is in real trouble. We see a president who has made himself a king and dictator. And we don't see an opposition that's powerful enough to stand up against the trampling of our rights and the trampling of the Constitution that's happening every single day.
That was, of course, actor Mark Ruffalo there at the end. It culminated a week of unrest and anger across the country in the face of a stunning escalation of the Trump administration's overreach on multiple fronts. The indictment of a member of Congress, New Jersey Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, for attempting congressional oversight. The forcible removal of Democratic Senator Alex Padilla, the senior senator from California, from DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's press conference for trying to ask a question. And the federalizing of the National Guard, who, along with active duty Marines, are on the streets of Los Angeles, which had already led to protesters to take to the streets in opposition to Trump's immigration raids. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman and Marine veteran Seth Moulton of Massachusetts. Congressman, thank you for coming to the weekend. As I mentioned, you are a Marine veteran who is deployed overseas. Just your thoughts on what it means to you to see Marines deployed on the streets of an American city.
Well, it's unbelievably undemocratic. I think the courts will show that it's unconstitutional the way that Trump has gone about this. We've never had an instance of Marines deployed against peaceful protests like this in the past. There was a time about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when Marines were deployed at the governor's request. I think about 80 people had already died in violent protests in L.A., and this is very different. The governor doesn't want the Marines to be there. But speaking as a veteran, I have to tell you, the Marines don't want to be there either. No one signs up to join the United States Marine Corps to attack protesters, to go against Americans on the streets of an American city. Just like no one signs up for the United States Army to march in a parade, by the way. That's not why you sign up to serve the country.
Congressman, the Marine deployment in L.A. is still just absolutely unbelievable to me that we're doing this. And I want to play some comments from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth this week in an exchange with your colleague, Ro Khanna.
Can you assure the American people on two things? You will respect any Supreme Court decision on this matter about whether the Marines are constitutional, and you will respect the district courts when they rule before the Supreme Court rules.
What I can say is we should not have local judges determining foreign policy or national security policy for the country.
So you're not willing to say you would respect those decisions?
What I'm saying is local district judges shouldn't make foreign policy for the United States.
Congressman, this is just incredible to me, just flouting the checks and balances of our government. What can Congress do here to have oversight over the most important duty of the commander-in-chief, and that's where he deploys troops?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's flouting the law, it's flouting justices. It's basically Pete Hegseth saying that he thinks that he and the administration are above the law. And that's always been the attitude of this administration. That's always been the attitude of Donald Trump. Politicize the military, use the military for their political goals, and show America that they are above the law. Congress, of course, should be stepping in and stopping this. But under Speaker Johnson in the House, I don't think we've seen a weaker Congress in maybe in American history in a very, very long time, because the Republicans simply refuse to take any accountability to fulfill their constitutional responsibilities to hold the executive in check. And it's dangerous for America. It's why it's so important that Democrats win the midterms, and why some of us are so focused on how to move the Democratic Party forward so that we can ensure victory and have some actual oversight from Congress.
Congressman, I'm an Army brat, military brat, so I know how and just as you know, how much help that the VA needs, understand how much help the members of our armed services need, both while they're serving and after. $45 million for the president's parade yesterday, around $140 million for the troop deployment in Los Angeles. I guess I'm just curious, what do you think we could do with that money? It's not, this is for the federal government, it feels like pennies, but you're talking about nearly $200 million. What could that $200 million do for the members of our armed services?
It's a great question, because it could make a huge impact on the lives of individual troops and individual veterans. When I got elected to Congress, I made a commitment to continue getting my health care at the VA alongside my fellow Marines. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of the VA. I was on the phone with a Marine from my 2nd platoon earlier this week, because he's having trouble getting seen by the VA, even though he has tumors growing all over his body, something that's not uncommon among Iraq and Afghanistan veterans because of the things we were exposed to overseas. Imagine what a difference just a few $100,000 could make in his care. DOGE has cut millions of dollars from the VA, tens of thousands of employees, many of whom were added, by the way, by the Biden administration to meet the demands of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. And so while you're right, $200 million might seem like a drop in the bucket when you're paying $13 billion a pop for aircraft carriers. When it comes down to taking care of our troops, it could be enormous. It could have an enormous impact. And this money has just been...
Joining us now, Peter Baker, chief White House correspondent for the New York Times and an MSNBC political analyst, and Susan Glasser, staff writer for The New Yorker. They are sitting in the same spot because if you didn't know, they are married. Happy Father's Day, Peter. So I want to zero in on a key question that was asked of folks in this survey, and it's the most important issues to the respondents. This is element 6. And you notice I said in the intro that the biggest issue for the president was immigration, and you got a lot of people who are disapproving of what the president, approving of what he's doing. 51% approve. But when you look at what issues matter most to you right now, immigration is 1, 2, 3, 4, comes in 5th at 9%. So, Peter, why is the president still so focused on immigration when what the American people really care about is our economy, democracy, healthcare, crime, and safety?
Well, I think in part because that number is much higher among Republicans, right? It's about 20% of Republicans say it's their number one issue. So he is, of course, appealing to the people who brought him to the office, right? He has always been somebody who focused mostly on his own base and what they were interested in rather than the public at large. He's lost, half the country that he's never going to get back. So the fact that they may not care as much about that issue doesn't matter as much to him. Now, the economy, of course, is an area of vulnerability for him because right now people feeling a little anxious about what's happening with the tariff wars and what might be coming in terms of, price increases and so forth. And so, of course, he wants to focus on an issue where he has more support, at least among his MAGA base, until, as much as he can.
Could you talk a bit, Susan, about the evolution of Trump on immigration, or rather the non-evolution, since that moment he was on the escalator and he came out so hardcore on immigration 2016, and then he's used it to varying effect throughout his campaigns. The Wall vaunted him into the presidency. 2018 ranted about caravans. It didn't really go over. Now you look at these numbers and the country is so evenly split on immigration, and he's throwing everything at the issue and has gotten so militarized in his use of force around the country. Is there political utility still for Donald Trump?
Well, it's very interesting. It is his view that this is the core to who he is as a politician and the reason why he was elected president not once but twice. And so that's a pretty unshakable view. I would say at this point, we're a decade into this. He began his political career, as you mentioned, by talking and demonizing immigrants. It's in that sense not surprising at all that 10 years later he's still doing it. The problem for Trump is that he only has one playbook. And right now, I think he's facing a big dilemma because he both wants to declare victory over this huge wave of illegal immigration that he claims is all Joe Biden's fault. At the same time, he is justifying his extraordinary and arguably extra legal crackdown on immigration by saying that we're under invasion. And so you can't really be under invasion by rampaging hordes of illegal aliens. At the same time, you're also declaring victory and that your policies of mass deportation now are such a success. So I think right now, Donald Trump is facing the dilemma of governing. He's much better, frankly, as an outside candidate ripping down those whose job it is to govern the country than he is as a governor, in part because the responsibility of making tough choices in the White House doesn't lend itself to Trump-style demagoguery, I would say.
Rude awakening for Trump after his failed parade. Absolutely. And the rude awakening is that it's not distracting from his failures. Again, there's the concept going back to like ancient Rome, bread in circuses, right? That if you give the populace bread, like food, right? If you keep the populace fed, you meet their base material needs, and you give them something exciting, they will be, complacent and compliant. Now, of course, it's a simple theory, but you can often see in empires that have been successful, the population is fed and are given, things to occupy their time and what have you. The most successful empires have done that. And the United States for a long time has done that too, right? The United States, it's not perfect. A lot of people go hungry. But, in most of, the last 50, 60 years, Americans haven't dealt with food insecurity as much as other countries have. And, there's always something on the TV or the internet or what have you. And so Trump thought, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give them a big parade. But it didn't work, Donald, because the bread and circuses don't solve everything. They might solve smaller problems. But your fascistic turn has woken up too many people. You can't bread and circus your way out of this one, especially when, under you, the bread is getting more expensive and it's your fault. So he thought, I'm going to distract people. I'm going to distract people with my big fancy parade. And everyone's going to forget that I'm abusing my powers as head of commander-in-chief. And that my tariff policies have taken a situation that was improving under Biden, even if it wasn't improving quickly enough, was getting better under Biden, and I not only stopped all that progress, but reversed it entirely. Donald, your circus it's not getting you out of this one.